After the doubleheader on Tuesday, it's time to focus on a single game. Here we are on Wacky Wednesday. We love to give every day a name, don't we? But this is a crucial clash, and this is what we're looking forward to right here. Let's just quickly remind you right up top what the match is that we are looking at. It is, of course, the men from Bengaluru taking on Sanju Samson's Rajasthan, and this should be critical, as we will find out very shortly. Welcome again to Cricbuzz Live in association with our fantasy partner, My 11th Circle. In the studio to have another one of our scintillating conversations, I'm joined once again by Joy Bhattacharjya. We've been chatting for the last couple of days, but also good evening to Pommie and Mbangwa.
Good evening to you, Gautam. I think I'm seeing you for the first time on our lovely platform. Nice to see you. And Joyda, nice to see you, Joyda. Hope you're well. Hope everything's good
well.
Your end.
Yeah, you've also gotten the habit of saying Joyda. Now I'll never live it down. And you and Julie were some of the few people who didn't call me Joyda, but hey, life, such is life.
Well, here we go. It's just a matter of respect.
It's respect. That's what it is.
What we will not see, while there is obviously lots of respect between teams, once that white line is crossed, we're getting to the stage of the tournament where you sort of toss respect out the window. It's about runs, wickets, and points. So before we go any further, I think it's time to have one more look at the points table, which is now starting to get critical, folks. Here we are. The two teams in question today, two ends of the table, not extreme ends. Bangalore in third place. At one stage in the early part of the tournament, they were leading, looking for a 1-2 almost guaranteed. Now they're going to have to fight for that 1-2 if they really want it. Qualification looks sort of within reach. For Rajasthan, well, they were in that logjam of 8 points. Two teams have got out of it. They too need to see if they can get to 10 points today and try and halt the Bangalore juggernaut from going forward. Pommie, I'm going to come to you first because there's a lot of chatter about Bangalore's remaining games being against so-called lesser opposition, in inverted commas. Now, what's your take on looking at their schedule and saying if you're playing a Hyderabad to finish with and Punjab, does it make a difference at this stage in this tournament?
Look, theoretically, many will say yes, that does make a difference. These are the sides that are not winning many games. These are the sides that look like they're kind of easiest to beat. But it's this league where you presume absolutely nothing. Absolutely, you cannot say because a team's 8th in the log that it means that they're going to lose against the team that's first in the log. Particularly as we come towards the end of the round robin scenario, because so often we've seen that teams that are towards the bottom and many times are out of the tournament already are the ones that are a fly in the ointment for the teams trying to make it to 1 and 2, trying to make it into that 4th spot. And by virtue of losing to a team that's below them, they end up finishing 5th or something like that, or 4th, as the case may be, where they're trying to get to 1 and 2. So, yeah, I think because you have in each side match winners who can destroy any opposition on any given day, you cannot assume because of the opposition before you that you will therefore end up where you desire. I think actually the teams that are not playing well, and I'll throw this in there because this year is a particularly big year in terms of performances for players, right? Let's say a team decides, well, much like what's happened with Sunrisers. Warner, look, we'll see what our youngsters can do. Let's see what we have in the cupboard. We know you're really good, but we're kind of struggling and we don't know where to go. Give some other guys a go. The reason those other guys perform, and many players will say, no, we don't look at that. No, we don't think about it. There is an auction. There are 2 more franchises coming. It means put your CV on the table. How are you putting your CV on the table? And does it matter who you're playing against? Of course it matters who you're playing against. The bigger the scalp, the better. So you've got more to fight against if you're the bigger side and you're facing the side that's supposedly smaller, lesser, and in worse form. Now, I don't think you can take anything for granted.
Absolutely, Joy. Joy, you've already mentioned the auction more than once in this context. So there's the auction, and there's the fact that even the Hyderabad side are technically not out of it. So while they might play for pride at a later stage, for now they're still playing for position.
No, they're still playing for position, but also remember, both things can happen. I mean, just as Pommie was talking about players, teams trying out new players, those players might necessarily be better and extremely involved because they finally got their chance. And one thing that Pommie is saying is very true. There are 56 first 11 Indian players. Okay, 8 teams, 7 Indian players, 56. That becomes, so 56 means you assume there are about 70, 80 guys who are definitely first 11 prospects, serious first 11 prospects. That when that goes to 70 because of the teams, your pool suddenly increases. So guys who are just about fringe now, I mean, I'll give you great examples. Abhishek Sharma, right now, just on the fringe. He's a good player, but he's not getting a first 11 place. Those guys will suddenly come into contention. So for them, they know it. I could be not only picked in the auction, I could be a first 11 player. There's another interesting thing. Suppose Chennai now wins their next couple of games, okay? And they go to a situation where they're 11-2, okay? And they're definitely sure of first place. Okay, Chennai is an aging side, okay? They're not a young team. They have a lot of, bodies that need rest. What stops them from turning around in a crucial match, because it's not crucial to them, and saying, you know what, Jadeja, I'm not going to risk you. Bravo, I'm not going to risk you. There's big games coming in the next couple of days. I don't want to risk you guys. It's happened before in 2010 when Kolkata played against Mumbai. Mumbai rested 5 of their first team. Harbhajan captained the team. Sachin didn't even come to Calcutta. So those things also happen. A team that is surely first or second, because this is a very tight tournament, could end up actually telling guys at that point in time, hey, you know what, just take it easy for a couple of days because, there's nothing to play for other than injury right now.
Fair point. That's an extra sort of point added there. I mean, we were doing parallels to football, Pommie. Everyone apparently wants to play Arsenal, but even they've won a game this season. That's all I'll say about that.
Gautam, many of my friends have just switched off the television.
Let me tell you something. You have done a better thing than a certain Mr. Kapoor would have done. He would have referred to another team. Anyhow,
I know.
We'll leave that right there.
Yeah. I would have done that, but I try to. I know my opposition and I know my counterparts and what to say in front of whom. We'll just leave it at that. Very shortly, we're going to bring you toss news. We know there's a bit of a hard surface. That's what we're expecting from eavesdropping at the pitch report. A fair covering of grass as well. So it should mean. I'm just waiting to see what it'll influence as far as the toss is concerned. All I can tell you is that a man who's not known for winning tosses, Virat Kohli, has actually walked up and picked up the microphone first. So he will be deciding what to do first. And we'll tell you very shortly what it is. We were also seeing, Joy, that there's been a cap handed out. Rajasthan will bat first. Virat Kohli has decided to chase. We don't know who the cap was given to. But interesting that there should be a possible cap handed out because we felt that the Bangalore side picked itself, at least in terms of the overseas players. But it could just be left field.
It could be left field, but I think it's George Garton because he's had this fantastic, really, really good 100. They really rate him as a prospect and they've been waiting to give him a chance. And I think George Garton, the left arm actually makes a lot of difference as well. I think George Garton is a good call to make. And it'll be interesting to see how he goes.
Yes, of course, we'll come to that as and when we've got a confirmation of the teams. Let's start with Samson, Sanju Samson. So much talk about him throughout the tournament. We've had conversations, how pretty he looks, wanting him to score more. But they've had a problem at the top because while Samson's answered everyone and said, fine, you want me to score? Stay longer? I'll stay longer. He's done it. He's picked up some scores for me. But what he hasn't had some help at the other end. Because Samson, obviously Butler while he was around, but nobody else is contributing. That's why they're where they are on the table.
It's such a pity, isn't it? I mean, I hear you when you say we've spoken so often and we've said we want him to be a more consistent player. And I think he's kind of headed in that. He's certainly been so this time around. His runs are all sort of coming in the losing cause, but he's being left man alone, whilst everybody else kind of, you know, I tell you what, the way they're playing, each time they might get into some sort of position, they seem to be able to just throw it away. Or right at the beginning, they don't get into any sort of position, and he's there trying to kind of stave the walls off from the door, you know. And it's a difficult position to be in, particularly because he's skipper as well. And I wonder if there's been a case for an inability to play freely, to take full responsibility, that has then allowed him to have this sort of consistency. And I know that's terrible, because in a side that's going badly, you want them to go well, and you want him to express himself, and you want him to be able to still retain some sort of consistency in terms of scoring runs. But in a cause that's going to get them to 180, not that's going to, rescue an innings and get them to 145, 150, and not be able to win a game. I hope he can play this way with the same sort of responsibility, even though with an aggressive mindset and having others support him, because he's looked good. I think he's looked good. And I know that seems a silly statement, because all the time he looks good. But good and determined might be together this time.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, because often, Joy, they talk about, when we ask a captain that is the captaincy affecting your batting, and the first answer, which is not just an answer, is when you're batting, you shouldn't be thinking of captaincy. You're captaining basically on the field. So ideally, when you're a batsman, you're in that zone, and the two things should not marry.
Yeah, I mean, that is an ideal situation. It rarely happens. I mean, in whatever limited understanding I have, some people just relish it. It works better for them when both of them go together. Some people just are distracted by captaincy, and it hasn't worked for them. Sachin being a test case in point. I mean, he's very good, but just captaincy and Jacques Kallis, another great player, but he didn't want to be captain. And so I think it depends from player to player. Interestingly, today I was just thinking about looking at the Rajasthan batting order and saying they might just have, if they had the choice of winning the toss, they might have batted first as well. Because with the kind of 4, 5, 6, 7 they have, and the kind of performances they're getting nothing out of that. Their ability to chase is much. I think they are much, much happier putting runs on the board and then try to, because I think they trust their bowling more than they trust their batting. So, even if they had won that toss, I wouldn't have been at all surprised if, he would have taken exactly the decision that, okay, I'm going to bat, you guys bowl.
Yeah, fair point. We're going to come very shortly to the 11s, of course, Joy, and it was GG, George Garton, who's the man who will be playing, but we will talk about that later. For now, let's just stick with Rajasthan at the moment, and we've talked about Sanju Samson. We've got a few interesting matchups to talk about, and I think let's perhaps go into those matchups at the moment. You look at that top order, you look at the changes, Pommie, in terms of the opposition that they're facing. That middle order really is the Indian players, whether it's in the context of an auction or whatever it is, they're the ones who really need to step up. And the gulf in the batting experience is what really is a telling, is something telling. You've got Kohli, Padikkal on the one hand, and if you just have a look at this comparison, that itself tells a story. We've been going on about the likes of Riyan Parag and Lomror and company, etc. Just look at the T20 caps and the comparison on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, the middle order of RCB is packed with internationals, and they have a great deal of experience. And the crazy thing for me is, in terms of making replacements as the Rajasthan Royals, it's not really been a case of let's make replacements that are going to be more balanced in terms of trying to get an order. So, and then play them that way. Generally, what you get from the Rajasthan Royals is up at the top, you have Jos Buttler, you have his teammate in Ben Stokes. I'd forgotten his name. Do you know that? I'd just gone out of my mind right there. Yeah, you have Ben Stokes, and then another teammate in Jofra Archer, right? And what you have when you kind of go that route is that you've got sort of all the bases covered. You've got the middle, you got the top, and you got the bottom. But what happened with Ben Stokes is that they decided he was going to bat up at the top as well, and so it left this chasm in the middle. And because of that chasm in the middle, there's been this problem now of how do we sort out the middle order. I would say it's the most difficult place to play in the 2020 game. Just like in the one-day game where guys walking at 5 and 6 and have to sort games out. In the 2020 game, batting from over 7 to over 14, 15. That's very difficult. How does a side keep their momentum there? So I think that's where you need experience, not young Indian players. And not because they're not talented, but at least give them something. Use a Miller, play him more than one game and then toss him out. Play him a few games and say, we need you in this middle part to hold it together and move it along like we need. And then their team would be better balanced.
Interestingly, Joy, we talked about this the other day. The numbers actually were not so bad for Rajasthan. We were comparing different teams playing from 7 to 15, and they were actually doing pretty decently there. So they've not done so badly, but it's obviously along with that, losing wickets, not having someone to finish after that is what I think their problem has been.
Yeah, and remember, when you were talking about 7 to 15, if Sanju Samson has got runs, he's batting at 7 to 15.
Correct.
So he's there. So that's why he's one of the guys who's a natural striker of the ball. He's never had trouble scoring runs. His strike rate at the worst of times has been excellent because as a player he lacked consistently, but he is one of the few players, and why he's unique in probably even in the Indian setup is he can get you runs under any circumstances. I mean, whether he sticks around the crease or not is a different matter. And I think what Pommie said is very true. You need the experienced international guys there. If they had a solid international talent at 6, who'd say, okay, I can slow it down. I'll take a few singles because, we got a low score, but I can whack it to the end. They need that, that number 6. They need a gun cricketer there. And instead they have this really raw talent.
Sorry, Jill. So I look at it the other way. You need an Indian player there. An experienced, you imagine that. You imagine an experienced Indian player in the middle of that order. Then you can go with whoever you like in terms of internationals. And there's less to sort out. It's just how it is. There's just going to be less to sort out. And your team then has that balance.
Well, we'll try and see if we can
sort also another names. Thing I want to say. Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing, you see, you have a coach like Sangakkara. Sangakkara has been handed a plate with food on it, with players on it. Okay. These are not the players he asked for. So tactically, he's looking at it and saying, okay, I've got to do with whatever I have right now. So very often you can see his frustration outside because he really doesn't have the team. So he's also looking at this team and wondering, how much can I do to get a good result this year and really go out full hog at the auction next year? I think that's how he's looking at it as well, saying that we need to surround Sanju with more pieces that give them value.
Well, let's look at the playing 11s right now. We did talk about the changes for the men in pink. There has been that change everyone's crying out for. Where is Kartik Tyagi gone? So JD goes out, Jaydev Unadkat, and makes way for Kartik Tyagi, man of the match the other day for that outstanding over. And he comes right back into the lineup. So
we're missing a plane. We're missing a plane. It should be at the top there.
Yeah, we'll give Evan Lewis his plane. We'll give Evan Lewis his plane there.
In business class, by the way.
Fair enough. But he needs, Evan Lewis is one person, once as and when he gets his plane, Pommie, would really need to replicate the kind of form he brought from the CPL. And he hasn't quite done that. He's got his starts. We saw one rasping shot, but it's not 1 or 2 shots. He needs the 50 up there.
Yeah. Look, the nature of the game is such that many can be hit or miss. It would be lovely for Rajasthan Royals if he can put on a show and do, what we all know he can. He's brilliant to watch. He bludgeons it to all parts. And This is known. It's not like we're thinking about something that doesn't happen. It happens, and happens quite often when he's playing in the CPL. Happens when he plays for the West Indies. And Rajasthan Royals would like him to do this. The unfortunate scenario is he's got a compressed period and a pressurized period where we're trying to make it to the playoffs. We need you to do it now. You don't have 14 games. You've got 5. Please. In fact, it's gone down, isn't it? It's less now. You got less games. Come on. We need you to put in 2 performances so that we can get into the top 4. So all of them feel pressure. Some of them, when situation is like this is when they stand up. So maybe today, never know. He's certainly capable. Certainly.
Yep. Yeah, him, Liam Livingstone, so much talked about him, obviously shown glimpses of it. And I think Rajasthan will know that if they have to really lord it over Bangalore, 2 of the players will have to assist Sanju Samson, along with that little Indian middle order, Liam Livingstone and Evan Lewis. The big change, we did identify the cap being handed over to George Garton. The man, of course, who makes way is Kyle Jamieson. So that's sort of a like-for-like replacement almost. We're not sure if that's what the batting order is going to be. Not sure of George Garton's batting skills at the moment. But what it does tell you is, again, that top 6 needs to do the job. And they have done the job so far, Joy. So no real panic situation as such for them at the moment.
No real panic. And, I've always been very chary of the number of changes Bangalore makes. But in this case, this is a change I can understand. Because you're not changing the structure of the team. The structure of the team is the same. You're taking one fast bowler who's working and put in another fast bowler. But basically the slots, the positions in which they're playing, the responsibilities remain the same for the player. So if you have to make a change, that's a good change without actually upsetting the sort of balance of the team. Because our problem with changes is not about just changes. It's about changing the balance, changing the way players are suddenly saying, oh, I was batting at 3, now I'm batting at 5. Oh, somebody else is coming as opener. Where am I? That uncertainty is not good for them. So I think George Garton for Kyle Jamieson is just a 1-for-1 straight-off swap, and I think it worked for them because he's a good enough bowler. They need to take a look at him because, again, I think left-handers, if you look at the IPL history, they've had a disproportionately good record because obviously you don't play that many of them, and so it's always worth trying him out.
Well, it should be fascinating when you've got a brand new player coming in. The first thing you think of course, is if you're playing on your My 11 Circle teams, do I get him in straight off? Well, I'll leave that for you to answer it. In case you're not yet playing, by the way, get on the app, download it. It's great fun. There are great incentives. How you do it? Just select the match, which today is Bangalore against Rajasthan. Select your 11 players, make a captain, and look at that. 5 crores as your first prize. It doesn't get bigger than that. So you can have a bit of fun, bragging rights against friends. Get in George Garton if you want to, just as a little bit of a gamble. Not that that's what the game is about. It's about skill, but purely in terms of not having seen him. However, other than George Garton, we like to give you a little assistance. Our My 11 Circle Smart Picks, which is based on a lot of research, a lot of thinking, and these are the 3 that we've got for you. Joy, we'll start with Yuzvendra Chahal. How brilliant was he last time around? And straight in there, maybe a few people would have dropped him from their My 11 Circle teams early on, but a good matchup. You're talking about Chahal versus Sanju Samson. Not sure if he'll get to bowl to him early on, but Kohli, if he knows this matchup, might just do that.
He might just do that, and he's very good at that. And, the one thing that he does beautifully, Chahal, is play the ground. He's a chess player in his youth. So he'll play the ground. He knows which side he wants to bowl from. He knows how wide he wants to drag Sanju. And he's done this before in the past. Just dragged him wider and wider. And Sanju's reaching and just doesn't have enough power. So he's he's a very clever bowler. And you're right, Kohli will probably use him because they know that, this guy is the orange cap. This guy is the danger man. So they'll go after him. And I'm sure they will. And I think it's a mouth-watering matchup because Chahal is also the vice captain of our PTP 11, Point to Prove 11. So he has a point to prove, especially given what the other leggies are doing. He really has a point to prove.
Yeah, we're going to discuss...
Sorry, Gautam. I said when we were talking with Sean, I was with, and Gaurav, that it was so important for RCB for Chahal to be back in form. He's had a struggle of it. He's had a tough time. Cricket is a game where you're kind of having to deal with disappointment, and how you do deal with that is kind of what makes you stronger and essentially what makes the career, because there's a whole lot of it. Whether you're the best batsman, even the likes of Sachin Tendulkar, legend as he is, you don't score runs every single time you go and bat, and each time that they don't score runs, they feel like they've failed, right? And so there are not many highlights in comparison to how many times you go out there. And leading up to the back end of the tournament, I think this is going to be particularly important for RCB. Yes, there are places that are working. Yes, there are places that are not working. But if they're going to be in the shakeup, the person they need is the guy who's been taking wickets for them season after season after season, and has been that guy who you say, here's a situation, maybe we're going to get in trouble before we get there. Yuzi, please do your thing. And he does. Over and over, you deliver game after game after game. And then it's just hit this trough. It happens. How do you pull him out
Hold that thought, Pommie. Hold that thought, because we want to talk a little bit more about Yuzi, and I want to get your thoughts on this and Joy's thoughts. So we'll come back to the chess player after we make a few more moves of our own and give you two more My 11 Circles smart picks. So moving on from Chahal to the opposition. Again, bit of an up and down tournament, but Chris Morris tends to be a bit of an enigma, Joy. The other day we were on the show with Sean Pollock, and he sort of told me a little too late, don't pick Morris in your team. I was wondering why he got smashed. He said, I told you so. But Chris Morris certainly, if he could bat maybe a little bit high up, but hits his bowling that really has been impactful for different franchises.
Yeah, he needs to bowl well, and he hasn't bowled well, as Pommie was discussing before this broadcast. He's just not looked the player that costs that much of money, and he needs to be, because whatever it is, this franchise has given him a lot of money and said, you are our strike bowler and you are our lower order hitter. He's got both responsibilities. He's been protected to a certain extent because Mustafizur has really done well for them, has done absolutely brilliantly for them. But they need Morris back, because if Morris gets going with Mustafizur, it makes a difference. And I think he's got wickets in Dubai. I think he's very much a confidence guy. Pommie will know more. If he gets wickets, perhaps his tail will be up. Things could be very different.
Very quickly, Pommie, what's the one quick thing that Morris needs to do as an adjustment? Sean Pollock talked about how he falls away. And the moment he starts falling away, that's it. Good night for him that day.
Yeah, and I think it's the obvious thing. It's the obvious thing that you see in a guy's action. And I wondered, like in watching him, I wondered if it was a case of prior to the start of this edition in India, had sufficient time and had taken sufficient time to get the engine going and make sure that you're okay and whatever. So a lot of hard work, a lot of attention to detail, and then the break. And then having had the break, thinking, okay, so I was in condition, I just need to kind of fine tune, get back, instead of restart once again and work towards like it's a whole new thing, and maybe didn't quite put in enough. And by that, I don't mean didn't work hard enough, but sometimes you don't work smart enough because you don't think anything's wrong, and so you don't pay attention to whatever. It's a big thing for me that the action, instead of him being upright, he's kind of falling this way and therefore can't get the ball outside off and has to push it down the leg side to right-handers. It's not going to be so simple. Then again, he knows what it feels like to bowl well. And if he can just get the feeling and turn it on, as Joy says, it would work wonders for Rajasthan.
Yeah, we still feel enough of an impact player, bats, bowls as well. Maybe he gets pushed up the order. Points will certainly come for him. That's why he's one of our smart picks. Smart pick number 3. And the reason why we put some of these players in, because they're not your obvious choices. You'll have a Kohli, you'll have a Samson in your team, but you may be having second thoughts about Devdutt Padikkal. Didn't necessarily perform last time around, but he's a big innings player, big impact player. If he gets set, Joy, 3 figures could be in the offing. Look at what he did against Rajasthan in the India leg.
And that was a smashing innings, and that's exactly what Devdutt Padikkal does very well. If he gets hold of the attack, and he's given the license, he's the guy who's attacking, because what they're doing is Kohli plays it a bit more careful in the beginning. Kohli sees, we'll hit only the bad ball, will not take risks. Padikkal is the guy who's supposed to go at the bowling. And he is returning here, he's had a little less success than he had, last year was a smashing year for him. But I think he's ready to go. And I think he likes this matchup again. I'll be interested in seeing how he plays Mustafizur, because Mustafizur is a very, very different quantity from the bowlers that they had last time. But let's see how it goes.
Yeah, we're coming back to our chess player. We've already had knight to S2 and rook to B2. I have no idea about chess. I play the game, but I've never understood all the technicalities of the move. So without getting too technical, let's come back to the visual side of the game, which we enjoy, rather than the technical side of it. Yuzvendra Chahal, we talked about the mind games. Let's just show you something that we've put together, which is a comparison of the India leg and the UAE leg, and his strike rate, the economy, the average, the wickets that he's taken in 2021, Joy. So again, there's been a comparison when he may have gone through a bit of a lean patch. Perhaps that cost him his space in the India side. But PTP 11 captain?
Yeah, vice captain, I'd say, because given the number of candidates who are there for captain are all batsmen. There's so many batsmen who are knocking. I have to say Shikhar Dhawan has to be PTP captain at this point in time. But yeah, I think that's the thing. It has stung in. He has come back very strongly. Also, now, with a pitch like this, Dubai is a big ground as well. He's going to enjoy bowling out here. Not all the surfaces for Bangalore were very suitable to them when they played the tournament last. So this might just be working for him. And I think he's also, when players, before getting dropped, they're always worried about, will I get dropped, will I get dropped, will I get dropped from the Indian team. Once you get dropped, it's happened. Then suddenly it's almost, again, we were talking about it yesterday, Gautam, it's a weight off your back. Suddenly you feel much more calm and said, okay, what I was most worried about, that's happened. It's not the end of the world. Now let's go and play some cricket. And that's when they come back. And I think exactly what we were talking about Ishan Kishan yesterday, it's exactly like that with Chahal. I think Chahal, because of his worry of being dropped from the Indian team, was sort of constricted. Once it's happened, actually, he's actually playing with much more freedom. And I think that's good. That's great for him.
Yeah, but do you see him, how soon do you see him making a comeback, Pommie?
Oh, difficult to say. That's never really in your hands. You've got to keep doing good things. You've got to keep playing well, and that's as much as you can control. What you've also got to understand is, whilst you're playing well, whoever you match up against who's in the national side might also be doing well at the same time. So then what happens? Then you kind of have to wait your turn, and that's doesn't matter. You can't be worried about whether you'll be selected or not. I think you don't want that. As much as a guy is worried about whether he'll get dropped, and when it happens, he has to focus on just playing. He's got to enjoy playing, and the more he enjoys playing, the easier it will be for his skills, which are really good skills, to come to the fore, and for him to then get success, as is happening now. Hopefully, this is a turnaround at the right time.
That's the diplomatic answer you've given us, Pommie. Now, I'm giving you the Indian selector's hat. Okay, we know the teams have been announced. Possible changes. Right. You still have a chance on the 10th of October. You are the chief selector. Rahul Chahar or Yuzvendra Chahal. One spot.
So I would have picked him in the first place. That's because I'm biased. Because I what I like about him is the ability to scrap, the hardened battler that he is. Many a time there's been situation where things are difficult, where skippers then said, I need somebody. Who do I go to? I go to Yuzvendra Chahal. So for me, he was, if I was picking a side, he was in my side. And this is not a slight on Rahul at all. It's just going into a big tournament. I'm looking for experience. I'm looking for a guy who I know when it's crunch time, I'm going to be able to say without any doubting, here you are, mate. And I know I don't just have him as the option because there are others in the setup. that are made for that sort of situation. And the obvious one, of course, is Bumrah.
Fair point.
No. Also, I'll just add to that. My point is that I really, in this 15, I wouldn't have put. Let's leave Rahul Chahal aside for a second. I think every international team now needs a leggy, at least one leggy. Okay, so like you need at least 2 fast bowlers, so you carry 3. I definitely have the second leggy out there. I feel that you're either going to play an Ashwin or you're going to play a Varun Chakravarti. Both of them are, different types of bowlers. You don't need both Varun Chakravarti and Ashwin because neither of them is a great fielder or great athletes in the field. Okay, so I would in fact have kept Chahal. I would have brought in Yuzvendra Chahal as well, and I would have said that tell the selectors, you decide. Is it Varun Chakravarti who may be the future, but is inexperienced, or is it Ashwin? Pick one of these two because both are not going to play. You can't have two.
Is he not number one spinner?
I think Jadeja is now your number one spinner. I mean, you have to say, given
is
all
he
that he
number
has.
one spinner or is he number one all rounder?
Well, he's your number one all-rounder. I think Ashwin, we've not played him in the T20 game in the last 3 years. How many T20s has Ashwin played? Ashwin has last played a T20 maybe in 2017.
Oh, no, by the way, my question is Chakravarti not number one spinner? That's my question. Not is Ashwin not number one? No.
We've all got selectors hats on now.
In 2020s, is Chakravarti not number one spinner? And I know he's young, but just look at numbers. Oh, you do a good job to just leave him out.
Yeah, so I'm saying pick one of those two. But don't give us 2 leggies. You'll need 2 leggies in this format.
It just shows that you throw in a selection type question. We can throw in all the stats we want, who's going to win today. See how much less of a passion that ignites than when you talk about a possible selection question. And we're not even selectors. I know India is a nation of 1 billion selectors, which is why the people who are actually selecting are under so much pressure. For now, India also is a nation of 500 million quizzers, Joy. So you've always got your task cut out when it comes to picking the right question. And your standards your bar has been set really high the second half.
Okay. Let's see how this one goes then. This is which name is missing in the middle? That means it's an order. These are all names in succession. You have to read them one after the other. Alec Betzer, Brian Statham, Fred Truman, Dash, Dennis Lilly, Ian Botham, Richard Hadley. And the total list doesn't start with Alec Betzer. It starts much before him. And it goes obviously far more than Richard Hadley. But I've just taken a place in the middle and there's a player missing in the middle. Who's the player missing?
Yeah, this one I think
you want me to answer?
No, don't. Not yet.
Oh, okay.
You can give us the answer once we're off the show because there's going to be lots and lots of people competing to have their name at the end of the show. #Cricbuzz Live, in case you didn't know, is how you get in the answers. I'm fairly certain we've already got a few answers in already. We've got lots of our familiar quizzers who are waiting for it. The one answer we've never really been able to answer properly the second half of the season, Pommie, is score predictions. A lot of us have got it horribly wrong, generally erring on the higher side. Today, with Rajasthan batting first, go for it first.
I should go for it first. I'm going to go for 167.
Very nice, easy, average type total, Pommie, you've taken. Are we going to go on either side of Pommie, Joy?
Well, I'm going to go higher because I just feel that, there's got to be one day when Lewis and Livingston get together and do something. So I'll say 180. Even nice.
Ooh, that's going to be a good chase for Kohli and company.
Now, there is your question.
147.
Oh, goodness.
Terribly
this
low.
This is interesting.
George
we could all be terribly wrong.
I know. We could all be. What it does is it gives us a huge window. It gives us a massive window. Somebody's going to squeeze themselves into that window. Not going to be very popular with folks from Rajasthan. I'm sorry about that. I'm just trying to put a punt and get something right.
You're not sorry at all.
Well, I tell you, I haven't won a single one except for power play predictions. So I'm trying to get a 20 over score right before the season finishes. Let's see how things go. Just a reminder once again, it's Rajasthan batting first, having lost the toss. We're going to be talking lots about it today. But for all of you, if you enjoy our selection chats, But if you enjoy a little more in-depth articles, conversations, videos, features, interviews, Cricbuzz Plus is the place to go. Get in there, subscribe, and be a part of an ever-growing cricket fanatic family. We shall join you there. We shall see you there. For now, it's just time to say thank you to Pommie and Mbangwa, Joy Bhattacharjya. We'll see all of you in the 10th over on Cricbuzz Combox. For now, that's all from this build up to this big game on Cricbuzz Live, brought to you in association with our fantasy partner, My 11 Circle.